jazzes and gentlemen. You keep waiting for a feeling, but the truth is consistency isn't born out of inspiration. It's born out of decision. And sometimes that decision has to be made in the middle of your mess, in the center of your storm, while your knees are shaking and your heart is breaking. You have to force yourself to be consistent, not because it feels good, not because it's easy, but because there is something in you worth showing up for. See, we love to talk about destiny. We love to shout about purpose. But destiny doesn't bow to the lazy. Purpose doesn't manifest in the hands of the passive. If you want to walk in power, if you want to see the fruit of what's been planted in your spirit, then you have to be consistent. Even when you don't feel like it, especially when you feel like it, consistency is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about waking up every day and saying, I'm going to show up for my life. Not just when the conditions are ideal, but when the bank account is low, when the friends are few, when the tears won't stop, when the noise in your mind is louder than the truth in your heart. That's when consistency counts the most. Because it's easy to be consistent when everything's working, when the lights are green and the doors are open. But what happens when it feels like everything's shutting down on you? When the prayers don't get answered right away, when the vision God gave you hasn't yet materialized, that's when you have to force yourself to keep going. Because consistency is warfare. It's a weapon. It's a declaration that no matter what life throws at me, I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still showing up. And I know you've got reasons, real ones. You've been tired. You've been broken. You've been betrayed. And somewhere along the way, you started negotiating with yourself. You started shrinking your vision to match your fatigue. But hear me, you cannot afford to keep backing down from the version of you that God strives first. You can't afford to keep pausing your potential because life hurt your feelings. You have to force yourself to be consistent. Not for applause, not for recognition, but because there's a promise with your name on it. And inconsistency is the thief that keeps stealing it. We think that discipline means never struggling. No, baby. Discipline means struggling but not quitting. It means having every excuse in the world to stop, but choosing instead to keep going. That's the kind of consistency that changes generations. That's the kind of consistency that heals bloodlines. That's the kind that tells hell you messed with the wrong one. You've got to push past your feelings. Feelings are fickle. They lie, they change, they fluctuate. If your commitment is tied to your emotions, you'll always be starting and stopping, always picking up and putting down. But when your consistency is tied to your why, when it's rooted in vision and not vibes, you'll keep pressing even when the pressure is heavy. Sometimes you've got to talk to yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. You've got to look at that mirror and say, we don't feel like it today, but we're doing it anyway. We're going to the gym, we're writing the book, we're praying the prayer, we're building the business, we're forgiving that person, we're choosing joy, we're choosing discipline, and then you do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Every time you choose consistency, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. You're voting for your future. You're voting for the version of you that doesn't settle for halfway healed, halfway delivered, halfway committed. Because you weren't created for halfway anything. You were created for overflow, for abundance, for legacy. But legacy doesn't grow in the soil of inconsistency. You keep praying for God to open a door. But can God trust you to keep showing up before the door opens? Can He trust you to rehearse your life before you get the stage? To steward your time before you get the platform? To manage the little before you get the lot? See, God doesn't just bless potential. He blesses preparation. And preparation requires consistency. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the most connected. But you do have to be the one who refuses to quit. You've got to be the one who says, I may not have everything they have, but I've got grit. I've got faith, I've got fight, and I've got the kind of consistency that refuses to die. That's where the oil is. That's where the anointing rests. in the daily decision to keep going, in the quiet yes, in the hidden discipline, in the unseen hours. That's where greatness is built. And I know it's lonely there. I know it's tiring. I know you feel like no one sees your effort. But trust me, God sees, and heaven rewards what man ignores. So today I dare you to force yourself out of bed, to force yourself back into focus, to force your mind into discipline. Not because it's fun, but because your future is too important to fumble. Because your calling is too valuable to cancel every time it gets inconvenient. You owe it to the healed version of you. Owe it to the little girl who dreams bigger than her environment. You owe it to the woman who's coming behind you, watching how you move, hoping you don't give up. There's a rhythm you haven't stepped into yet because you keep resetting. You keep starting over. But if you would just stay consistent, the results would show up. The peace would come. The favor would find you. The strategy would download. The clarity would come. But you've got to stay the course. You've got to keep swinging, even when you're tired. Keep rebuilding, even when the bricks feel heavy. There is beauty in the boring. There is blessing in the mundane, and you may not see it now. But every consistent step is carving out a lane that no one else can walk but you. You are cultivating endurance. You are building resilience. You are becoming the kind of woman who doesn't break under pressure, but becomes the pressure. So when it gets hard, and it will get hard, I want you to remember that consistency isn't just about reaching a goal. It's about becoming the version of yourself that can handle the weight of the goal once it's reached. You don't want to get to the promise and not have the character to sustain it. You don't want to touch the dream and not have the discipline to manage it. So keep going, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it doesn't feel fair. Keep planting, keep pushing, keep praying, keep showing up. You are not building a moment, you are building a life. And that kind of life requires a decision. Not just once, but daily. Force yourself to be consistent. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth the consistency of the decision, not a feeling. And if you don't understand that, you'll keep waiting for motivation to move you, inspiration to stir you, or circumstances to align before you act. But here's the hard truth: motivation is fleeting. Inspiration can't be trusted. And circumstances will rarely be perfect. So if you're waiting for the right moment to start being consistent, you'll always be waiting. At some point, you've got to make a decision that your life is now worth the effort. You don't feel like putting in the work. Feelings will lie to you. They'll whisper that you're not ready, that you're too tired, that no one's watching, that it won't matter anyway. But decisions are rooted in truth. Decisions are anchored in vision. Decisions don't need approval, applause, or ease. They just need agreement. You have to come into agreement with your own future and say, I may not feel ready, but I'm deciding to be faithful. I may not feel strong, but I'm deciding to show up. I may not feel equipped, but I'm deciding to grow. The problem is we get conditioned to chase emotion instead of mastery. We want the high, the spark, the surge of energy. And when it's not there, we assume something's wrong, but there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is the expectation that something extraordinary should feel exciting all the time. It doesn't. Building anything great, whether it's a business, a ministry, family, a healthier version of yourself, requires consistency through boredom, discomfort, and doubt. That's why it has to be a decision. When you decide to be consistent, you're saying, I'm in this even when I don't see results. That kind of decision builds character. It builds discipline. It creates a version of tossed around by mood setbacks of a purpose. And that version of you, she's the one who walks in power. She's the one who can be trusted with the dream. Because she's not just committed to the outcome, she's committed to the process. Every day you wake up, you have a choice. You can follow your feelings or follow your decision. One will lead you in circles. The other will lead you to breakthrough. Your feelings say, not today. But your decision says today is necessary. necessary. Your feelings say you failed too many times. But your decisions say, failure taught me how to fight. Your feelings say, no one will notice. But your decision says, God sees what's done in secret, and He rewards openly. Consistency doesn't ask, will I feel like this? It asks, what did I decide? You don't wait to feel like showing up. You just show up. You don't wait to feel confident before you move forward. You move forward and grow confidence on the way. And the more you make that choice, the easier it becomes to honor the decision over the emotion. Because you'll start seeing results, maybe not right away, maybe not loud and flashy, but over time things shift, mindset shift, habits shift, environment shift, doors open. Not because you felt like doing it, but because you decided to do it anyway. This world doesn't change for people who keep waiting to feel ready. It changes for those who dare to decide and then keep showing up for that decision day after day. So don't trust your feelings to build the future. They're too unreliable. Build it on the back of your decisions. Build it with the bricks of faithfulness, even in silence, because that is where consistency exists, for it's not in the hype that hit them. Yes, discipline means struggling but not quitting. It means being in the middle of a battle with your own mind, with your habits, with your weakness, and choose it not to walk away. It's not about having it all figured out. It's not about moving through life effortlessly. It's about deciding that your struggle doesn't disqualify you, it develops you. That just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. Discipline doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger. It teaches you how to keep going even when your body is tired, your emotions are raw, and your circumstances are screaming at you to stop. We live in a world that glamorizes instant results and quick wins. But what really separates the strong from the inconsistent is the ability to struggle and
there's this false belief that when you're truly called, truly gifted, or truly in alignment, things will just flow effortlessly. But the truth is, the calling will often cost you. The breakthrough will stretch you, and growth will test every part of you. Discipline says, I'm not here because it's easy. I'm here because it's necessary. You show up again and again, not because the path is smooth, but because the destination is worth the discomfort. Discipline knows what you're fighting for. It remembers your why when your how feels overwhelming. It's the voice that rises up in you when your will is weak and says, we're not quitting today. It doesn't silence the struggle, it just refuses to let the struggle silence your purpose. Discipline acknowledges the pain, but still presses through. It knows that your growth won't always feel good, but it will always be worth it. And yes, you will get tired, you will get discouraged, you will feel like giving up, but discipline doesn't require perfection, it requires persistence. It means choosing to keep showing up even when your steps are shaky, even when you have tears in your eyes, even when you fell yesterday and feel embarrassed to try again today. Discipline whispers, you can still go. And that whisper is louder than the screams of self-doubt when you learn to listen to it. There's a certain beauty in not quitting, a quiet kind of strength that doesn't demand attention but commands respect. Every time you choose to struggle through instead of walking away, you become a little more unshakable. You become someone who can be trusted with greater things because you've proven you can carry the weight of responsibility. You don't crack when the pressure comes. You don't flee when the fire gets hot. You know how to endure, and endurance is a gift that only struggle can give. Discipline isn't glamorous, it's not loud, it's not always visible, but it's powerful because it builds a foundation that emotion can't shake. It trains your mind to obey your spirit. It teaches your body to serve your mission. And when the world tries to tell you that the struggle is a sign to stop, discipline reminds you that the struggle is a sign to keep going. So no, discipline doesn't mean you won't struggle. It just means that when you do, you've already made up your mind. Quitting is not an option. Tie your actions to purpose, not emotions, because emotions change. Emotions are seasonal. One moment you're on fire and the next you're frozen in fear. One day you're confident and the next you're questioning everything. If your actions are ruled by how you feel, you'll be stuck on a roller coaster, up one day, down the next, never grounded, never steady. But when your actions are anchored in purpose, they don't move with the wind. They stay rooted even in the storm. Purpose gives your actions direction. It reminds you why you started when everything in you wants to stop. When you live from emotion, you're easily offended, easily distracted, easily discouraged. But when you live from purpose, you become focused, intentional, unshaken. You stop letting your feelings have the final say. You start letting vision take the lead. Some days you're going to wake up and feel empty. Some days the applause will be gone. The energy will be low. The progress will feel slow. And if you're only doing what you feel, you'll start pulling back. You'll tell yourself it's not working. You'll start talking yourself out of things you were once excited about. That's why your why has to be stronger than your mood. Purpose doesn't need hype. Purpose just needs a decision. There's a bigger picture at stake. Purpose reminds you that what you're doing isn't just about today. It's about legacy. It's about obedience. It's about becoming. When your actions are tied to that kind of clarity, you don't fall apart when things get hard. You adjust, you pivot, you cry if you need to, but you keep moving because you know it's not just about how you feel in this moment. It's about what you're building for the future. Purpose pulls you forward. It gives you something to press into when your strength runs low. When you know who you're doing it for, whether it's your children, your future self, your calling, or the generations coming behind you, you stop letting temporary discomfort keep you from long-term transformation. Emotions can blind you, but purpose gives you vision. And when you have vision, you make different decisions. You stop choosing comfort over growth. You stop quitting just because it got hard. You stop needing everything to feel good before you move. Because now, you're not chasing a feeling, you're chasing fulfillment. There's a fire in you that runs deeper than excitement. It's called purpose. And once you tap into that, you learn to show up even when you're hurting. You learn to stay faithful even when you're frustrated. You learn to keep building even when nobody claps. It's not that you ignore your emotions. They're real and they matter, but you don't let them run your life. You bring them into alignment with the bigger assignment. You acknowledge how you feel, but then you ask yourself, what did I commit to? And purpose will always point you back to consistency. Purpose says, I didn't come this far to let a bad day break me. I've got too much at stake, too much to give, too much to carry. There's something powerful about deciding that your purpose deserves more loyalty than your moods. That you're not going to keep restarting every time you don't feel like it. You don't need to feel inspired every day. You need to be committed every day. And that commitment has to be rooted in something deeper than a passing feeling. It has to be rooted in purpose. Because purpose sustains what emotion starts. Emotion gives the spark, but purpose keeps the fire burning. So the next time you feel like slacking, like quitting, like waiting until you're in the mood, remind yourself, your purpose didn't change just because your feelings did. Keep going anyway. God rewards preparation, not just potential. And we love to talk about potential. We love being told we're gifted, chosen, anointed, called, but none of that matters if we're not willing to prepare. Potential without preparation is like a seed never planted. It might have everything it needs to grow, but it won't produce anything if it's not placed, watered, and cultivated. You can be full of promise and still live empty if you refuse to do the work required in the hidden seasons. Preparation is where the unseen becomes the unstoppable. It's where God stretches you, sharpens you, breaks things off of you so you can carry the weight of what He's called you to. You're praying for open doors, but God is asking, can you carry what's on the other side? Everybody wants the platform, but few are willing to endure the process. The spotlight will expose what the secret place is, and God loves you too much to let you arrive at a place your character can't sustain. See, we're in a generation that's obsessed with being discovered, but God is more concerned with who you are when no one's watching. Preparation happens in the quiet. It happens when no one is clapping, when you're not being celebrated, when it feels like what you're doing doesn't matter. That's where faithfulness is forged. That's where God sees the real you, not the curated version, not the Sunday version, but the version who chooses to be excellent when excellence doesn't seem necessary. He's watching how you handle the small, how you treat the ordinary, how you show up for the repetitive. Because if you can't be consistent with little, you won't be trustworthy with much. And sometimes the delay you feel isn't denial. It's God saying, I'm giving you time to become ready. Not just to look ready, not just to sound ready, but to be ready. Ready in mindset, ready in maturity, ready in obedience. Preparation is not punishment, it's protection, it's grace. It's God shaping you for what's next so you don't sabotage it when it comes. You think you're waiting on the opportunity, but the opportunity might be waiting on you, waiting on your discipline, waiting on your stewardship, waiting on your obedience in the mundane. We underestimate how much God can do with someone who shows up day after day doing the work, sowing the seed, even when there's no applause. Potential might open a door, but preparation will keep you in the room. That's why the preparation season is often so private. Is God developing something that doesn't need an audience to grow. He's teaching you to pray in secret, study in secret, forgive in secret, lead yourself before you lead others. Because what you do in secret will show up in public one way or another. If you cut corners privately, it will cost you publicly. But if you prepare privately, God will reward you publicly. Don't let your hunger for visibility rob you of the depth that comes from preparation. Don't let frustration make you rush what God is still refining. You might not be seen yet, but you're being shaped. You might not be recognized, but you're being rooted. And those who are rooted can withstand the winds that come with promotion. So instead of asking when your time is coming, start asking, how can I be more prepared for it? Ask God to help you build stamina, humility, wisdom, and integrity now, before the moment comes. Because once the door opens, it's too late to prepare. Once the platform arrives, the foundation has to already be in place. And God in His mercy will keep you hidden long enough to make sure you're ready. Not just for the opportunity, but for the responsibility that comes with it. Legacy is built in the hidden, consistent moments, not the loud ones, not the ones that make it to social media, not the ones where the spotlight is shining and the world is watching. No, legacy is formed in the quiet places where no one is cheering and no one sees but God. It's shaped in the moments when you choose to do the right thing even when it's not convenient, when you forgive even though no one knows how badly you were hurt, when you show up for your family, for your calling, for your assignment, day in and day out without recognition. We often think legacy is about what we leave behind, but it's really about what we build right now. It's in the choices we make today that create a path for others to follow tomorrow. That decision to be kind when you could be cold, that's legacy. That commitment to show up to work with integrity even though it's draining, that's legacy. That quiet prayer whispered in faith, that moment of discipline when giving up would be easier, that small act of love that costs you comfort, those are the bricks that legacy is built on. Consistency in private is what secures impact in public. The world may never applaud you for waking up at 5 a.m. to pray, or for holding your tongue in that meeting when you could have defended yourself, or for choosing patience when your child tested every limit you had. But those are the moments that carry weight. They don't always feel significant, but over time, they build something eternal. They shape your character. They mold your influence. They write the story your life is telling. Legacy is not about perfection. It's about presence. Being present enough in your own life to choose growth over comfort, purpose over popularity, discipline over distraction. You don't have to be famous to build legacy. You don't have to have a platform. You don't have to be the most educated, the most gifted, or the most connected. You just have to be faithful. Faithful with what you've been given, faithful with where you are, faithful to keep planting even if the harvest seems far away. It's easy to think that what you do doesn't matter if no one claps for it, but God sees every hidden yes, every time you stayed when you could have left, every time you chose peace when conflict would have been easier, every time you sacrificed for your future when your present wanted comfort. He sees the hours, the effort, the heart behind the obedience. And he's not just watching, he's building something through it. The people who make the biggest impact are often the ones who just never stop showing up. The ones who kept praying, kept building, kept loving, kept forgiving, kept believing, even when it didn't make sense. That kind of consistency becomes legacy. Not because it was loud, but because it was lasting, because it left a mark, not just on what they did, but on who they became. And legacy doesn't start later. It starts now in how you speak and how you treat people and how you honor your commitments and how you show up when it's inconvenient. It starts with your habits, your mindset, your private choices. It's not something you hope to have someday. It's something you cultivate every day with every small, faithful decision. So don't underestimate those little moments. Don't discount the days when it feels repetitive, unseen, or unappreciated. Those are the days that matter most. That's where legacy is being written. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows where your character is carved and your roots grow deep. The fruit may not come fast, but when it does, it will last. Because it wasn't built on hype, it was built on consistency. Comfort is the enemy of growth. And the truth is, we've been trained to chase what feels good, what's familiar, what's safe. We want peace, but sometimes we confuse peace with comfort. Real peace comes from alignment with purpose, not avoidance of pressure. And if you're only willing to grow when it's easy, you'll miss every breakthrough that's waiting on the other side of your discomfort. The reality is, growth often comes wrapped in inconvenience, wrapped in stretching, wrapped in the unfamiliar. And if you're always running from that, you're also running from the version of you that's buried beneath the comfort. You don't grow in the places where you're always affirmed. You grow in the places where you're challenged, where the soil is tight but your roots have to dig deeper, where your patience is tested, your faith is pushed, your pride is humbled. That's where transformation happens, not in the places where everything makes sense, but in the places where nothing does and you still choose to move forward. Because when you grow, it's not always about gaining, it's often about shedding. Shedding ego, shedding habits, shedding old versions of yourself that were too small for where God is trying to take you. Comfort wants to keep you in cycles. It whispers, stay where it's safe. Don't risk it, don't stretch. But purpose calls you out of the boat. Purpose dares you to walk on water, not because the conditions are perfect, but because your trust is greater than your fear. Growth is not convenient, it's costly. It costs you certainty, it costs you ease, it costs you the illusion of control, but it always pays you back in wisdom, in strength, and resilience you didn't even know you had. Too many people abort their next level because it didn't come dressed in comfort. They asked God to grow them, and when He sent the challenge, they backed away. But what if the discomfort isn't the problem, it's the answer? What if that difficult conversation is how you build courage? What if that season of waiting is how you develop endurance? What if the rejection was God pruning your environment so you could finally focus? Nothing about growth is passive. You don't drift into greatness. You decide into it. You lean into the pain. You lean into the lessons, and you trust that God doesn't waste your discomfort. He uses it. He refines you in it. The same fire that feels like it's breaking you is often the one that's molding you into someone new. But you have to stop running from the fire and start recognizing its purpose. Comfort might feel good now, but it'll rob you later. It'll rob you of opportunities, of maturity, of becoming who you were called to be, because that version of you, she doesn't live in comfort zone. She lives in obedient zones, in growth zones, in the places where she chose development over distraction, where she chose the stretching over the settling. And that's what separates the stagnant from the unstoppable. So you've got to learn how to be uncomfortable and still move forward. How to feel the fear and still take the step. How to be uncertain but still show up. That's when growth is happening. That's when things are shifting. Not when it's easy, but when you're faithful in the heart, when you stop choosing what feels good and start choosing what is good. Long-term, soul-deep, purpose-aligned good. The most powerful breakthroughs usually come after your most uncomfortable yes. After the moment you said, this scares me, but I'm doing it anyway. Growth demands that kind of courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to push through it. And every time you do, you become a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more like the version of you that your comfort zone could never produce. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's not always loud or celebrated. It doesn't always come with applause or instant results, but consistency builds. It builds a discipline that carries you through dry seasons. It anchors you in purpose when your emotions waver. It prepares you for the doors you're praying will open and writes the legacy that outlives your name. It stretches you beyond comfort so you can grow into the fullness of who you were created to be. This journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being faithful. Faithful with your time, with your habits, with your healing, and with your calling. When you learn to be consistent, even when it's hard, even when it's hidden, you position yourself for transformation that lasts. Because what you do daily matters more than what you do occasionally. And if you can keep showing up, keep choosing growth, and keep saying yes to the uncomfortable, there's no limit to what God can do through you. So force yourself to be consistent, not because it's easy, but because you're worth what's on the other side of it.